So recently, Nintendo had a massive breach at their company, and a whole bunch of data actually leaked out. Fortunately, it wasn't nothing too crazy here. We're actually talking about some older stuff here. We're not talking about anything all too current, so they really don't have anything to worry about here. But anytime something does leak out this massive, honestly, it's not too good for a company. And apparently, what leaked out from Nintendo is going to be the Wii source code, developer materials, and N64 test ROMs. And honestly, this does kind of suck since you want to try to keep things under wrap as much as possible. Now, for most people out there, this isn't really going to do much, and it's honestly not going to mean much at all just because, well, most normal people like me or you probably can't do anything with all this data that's actually been leaked out from Nintendo headquarters, but just due to the fact that this did get leaked out is not good. Now, there is some benefits for this thing being leaked out to the public, of course. Since this stuff is leaked out to the public, that does mean we will get things like better emulation down the road, because now people got things like the Wii source code, N64 test ROMs, and things like that. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with here. It'll be good for people who like tinkering with ROMs, emulators, and things like that. And that means we should get better emulators and ROMs and things like that later down the road, now that people actually know more information about the Wii, more information about the N64, and things like that. But again, it is a shame that something like this would actually happen. You try not to let these things happen in the long run, but sometimes things like this just happen one way or another, which is, of course, if you run a company, it's bound to happen once in a while. Things like this are just easy to come by. Things get leaked, things get hacked, and just different stuff. And this one is one of the bigger ones that actually has happened to Nintendo in quite some time, that all these old files and all these old source code for all these old game consoles that they made was actually leaked out officially, and now this stuff is actually floating around the internet. I can't really tell you all too much about this, because when it comes to things like game coding, when it comes to game development, when it comes to all these different things, honestly, I'm not really too knowledgeable in this area per se, so I really don't know too much about this. All I can say, it's not good for Nintendo, but it is going to be good for the consumers in the long run if people get their hands on this, which is actually nice. And then moving on to some more Nintendo news, we do got more Nintendo news regarding specifically friend codes. You guys know friend codes has been a thing ever since the original Nintendo Wii, and that's pretty much the way you add friends online to your friends list, with friend codes. And friend codes have been there, like I said again, since the Wii, and they're still using them on their current gen system, the Nintendo Switch. And a lot of people actually don't like Nintendo's way of actually adding friends to your friends list, me included. I don't like friend codes just due to the fact that they're too long. It's hard to remember them. It's hard to tell your friends about them. Overall, I never really understood the whole principle behind friend codes, and it was kind of weird to me that Nintendo, of all companies, was literally the only company out there that was actually using a system like the friend code system. No other company did this. If you look at what other companies are doing, like Microsoft or Sony with their game consoles, they just use normal user profiles, like just make your own name up and then roll with that, which I was always down with. I always thought it was just a little bit more simpler, a little bit more easier just to use a pre-made name that you had out, because then you can just tell your friends easily what your name is. But officially, we do have actual news now about why Nintendo decided to go with friend codes rather than just normal usernames for your profile. And apparently the reason they actually decided to go with, if you look at this right here, there is some reasons. They basically state that they had some, they said it was going to be too complicated for them to use regular usernames, so they had to go with this brand new system called friend codes with a 12-digit code. I wonder why specifically they decided to go with 12 digits and not something a little bit less, a little bit more smaller than 12 digits, which actually kind of does just wonder. I don't think it specifically tells you why they went with 12 digits, but the whole gist here was the fact that there is a high, you can see here, problems. Let me go ahead and open Open image and new tab so we can actually see what we're talking about here. The friend code. To realize the friend code function, 12-digit friend codes are used. At first, there were options that instead of 12-digit numbers, a freely chosen screen name would be better, like, a normal system, like when you log into Facebook, when you log into just normal stuff, you just have one account, or when you have like another game system, you just have one simple username practically. The problems with using screen names include there's a high probability of duplicating screen names. When this happens, multiple re-entries are required. But the thing is, I don't actually buy all this just due to the fact that there are other companies out there that are actually doing it. So you can't tell me Nintendo doesn't know how to do it, and you can't tell me it's too complicated, because they are a company that's making a lot of money. So I'm sure in the long run they could actually make this happen if they really wanted to use regular usernames. So honestly, I want to say honestly, this blows my mind to so many levels, just due to the fact that Nintendo for some reason wants to be weird, so they make up all this weird stuff. I do know Nintendo, especially in Japan, does things a little bit more differently than stuff that we're normally used to. They do a lot of different things, and especially with their online services, they don't really understand how online should be handled. I don't know why they just don't take cues from like Microsoft or Sony or other online companies who run online services. It just doesn't make all sense to me, but there's their so quote unquote reason to why the Nintendo still uses friend codes, and why they decided to come up with the friend code system instead of using generic regular usernames, which is just very interesting. You would actually think it would actually be something else besides generic. Oh, we can't use generic usernames because it's too complicated. I don't buy that. I wish it was some other reason, but that's their reasoning, and it's just honestly kind of sad that they're actually doing this. But I know Nintendo is one of the game companies that always likes doing things a little bit different than some other companies out there, so it's not too surprising, I guess, to hear the news that they just didn't want to do it because they thought it would actually be too complicated. And then the last one for today's episode is actually going to be supposedly about a new Oculus Quest. Apparently, a new Oculus Quest is set to be coming out. Now, there is no concrete proof or concrete evidence that a brand new Oculus Quest is actually going to be coming out, but from this article it does say there may be one in development, and that's actually some pretty interesting news, since the Oculus Quest is actually a pretty good VR headset, and alongside it being a pretty good VR headset, it's one of the most unique VR headsets just due to the fact that you can actually use the Quest as a standalone VR headset. You don't need to plug it into a computer. You don't need to do anything with it. You can use it as a standalone headset. Pretty much what the Quest is. The Quest is a VR headset that's pretty much a mobile VR headset. It pretty much has all the electronics in it, and basically what it's running is it's pretty much running like a mobile processor, and it's running, I think, a version of Android, and that's pretty much how you actually use the Quest. So just think of one of those old VR headsets from like Samsung where you plop your phone inside the front of it. That's pretty much what the Quest is trying to go with. It already has the smartphone built in to the Quest, but basically apparently from this article, it does say Oculus is reportedly working on a lighter and faster Quest VR. And of course, this VR headset is almost coming up on a year now since its initial release date. And of course, the initial release date for the Quest VR is, I think, May of 2019. So you can see it's getting about 1 year old. And of course, if they want to keep moving units, if they kind of want to keep making this VR headset more appealing, sooner or later, of course, they're going to have to make a brand new VR headset, and the only way to do that, of course, is to make a successor to the pretty popular Quest VR headset. And one of the biggest flaws apparently with this headset alone is, I heard it from some people when I was actually interested in this product, is the fact that this is one of the few VR headsets that's actually a little bit too heavy. After a while, your head starts to kind of hurt, just due to the fact that unlike most VR headsets, again, it does have all the electronics inside of the headset, where most VR headsets don't have anything inside of the headset besides the lenses. Everything else is ran from either your computer or like a game console, like the PlayStation VR headset. So it would make sense that when you actually wear this, it would be a little bit, you would get a little bit tired of using this after a while, and the fatigue would actually set in, since also apparently it is top heavy, and most of the electronics, or all the electronics in this VR headset, are actually going to be in the front of the actual headset. So I can see how that would actually be a problem. So if some way they can actually make this headset a little bit more comfortable and really a little bit more lighter on the head, it'll make a much more better experience overall. And of course, along with those things, of course, they're going to have to do things like actually give you a better performance, better screens inside, and things like that. I don't think it would make any sense just to release a Oculus Quest 2 and do things like make it a little bit more smaller and a little bit more lighter. I really do think they would need to take the extra steps to actually do something like, for instance, actually give us new processing power and give us new chipsets, and maybe increase the resolution on the headset if they could actually do that. Apparently, from this article, also it does say they would potentially get a brand new screen on here. It says right now, I think it has a 72 hertz refresh rate, and of course this thing is meant to be playing a lot of games, and since you're going to be playing a lot of games, of course you want the smoothest experience, and apparently they want to go from 70 hertz all the way up to 90 hertz in the brand new Quest VR2, and yeah, that makes sense. But if they're gonna go ahead and go with that 90 hertz display and make the display a little bit better, of course I would assume that they would want to get more processing power as well, since the chipset in here is a little bit outdated at this point. It's still pretty good, but now that they're adding all this new stuff, and I think in December of 2019 they actually added motion tracking with your hands, so you don't actually have to use the two controllers in the actual box for this console or this VR headset. And if you're going to be doing anything like motion tracking, I really do think there needs to be a little bit more processing power as well. If they can just add all that different stuff, like maybe add a new screen, new frame rate for the screen, maybe make it a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller, add a new chip, add a new processor, throw it in the box, then you have a recipe for success, because this one is one of the most accessible VR headsets on the market without a doubt, because you don't need to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars for like a crazy gaming PC, which most of them you have to spend a pretty good amount of money for a crazy gaming PC, and that's not also including the VR headset. Same thing with PlayStation VR. You have to buy a PlayStation VR, and then of course you do have to own a PlayStation 4, which is a little bit more accessible in my opinion compared to owning a gaming PC and buying an expensive VR headset for a gaming PC. That one's a little bit more easier, but this one just takes the cake overall, and anytime they can make a brand new one, that's going to be very good for the consumers, and it's going to be very awesome. And the nice thing about this headset as well is you can also not just use it as a standalone VR headset. If you just want to use it as a standalone VR headset where you just plop it on and start playing games, start viewing content, you can actually also plug it into your PC if you do have a crazy gaming rig PC. So if they do end up making this a little bit more powerful, making the screens a little bit more nicer on this thing, that means it'll be much more better if you want to use it as both a standalone headset and one that's going to be connected to your PC. Overall, it would be actually a pretty cool deal if they actually get the Oculus Quest 2 actually on the market. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.